Hey, all you YouTube fans, it's Libris Blood here, and we're here with a little bit of a special mini-sode between as we move on with Notch. There are a few things I'd like to cover. I feel like the way last episode, which will go up at some point before this goes up, so hopefully it's up now as I'm speaking, but if not, so what happened in episode 4? And this is an update video. This is actually going to be in the Notch series. These are going to be recaps between the episodes that I feel have a lot of information to process that I don't feel I can get in adequately, as I forget to set my timer, and it's actually open this time. But I feel like episode 4, the way episode 4 or two episodes 2 through 4, the amount of information they're contained within each of those episodes, I feel like all the elements talking about them, I don't feel like I could give them enough justice for the developers to be able to just go over them very briefly in a well, last episode was almost 40 minutes. Unfortunately, it is very long. There's not a lot that I could cut out of it. So there will be an apology in the description because of its length. It doesn't keep in with the general length of the videos. It is the only one in this series that does go over 30 minutes. To my knowledge, I'm pretty sure episodes 1 through 3 are all under 30 minutes, if not right up to the wire. And the biggest reason is because of this extra analysis or content about the game itself and the individual chapters. Like I said, it is a very unique game. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of plot and story involved, or story elements involved in the game because it is a horror game. And if you're wondering, this is the title screen. I decided to have this as the background while talking about the game, um, just because it's something very familiar, and the music is off just in case the video gets flagged for copyright for the music. I want to make sure that this isn't monetized and has a bunch of ads on it. I know Always Remember Me has had that happen, but we're not here to talk about Always Remember Me. We're here to talk about Notch. So for the first chapter, the prologue was very interesting. Let me talk about the whole thing as a whole, because this is going to be a recap, uh, mostly about chapter 1 up to this point that we have experienced. So the prologue left us a little. It was very odd in the prologue because for that you got to see potentially the murder that we were talking about all throughout the chapter, uh, through episode 2 and 3. There's this murder that you start out with that you're playing as very briefly, not really playing as them, but you're seeing things through their eyes, and you get to see these descriptions and these horrible things happening to this poor innocent victim and how he treats them. Now, from there, or how they treat them, or no, they did say it was a man. Never mind. How he treats them. But the the thing beyond that is for the first chapter, it was called Dark Nightmare, and in that there was kind of like a subtitle, not really a subtitle, but it was a phrase that went with it, and it was the day we cease to exist. Now, a little bit of this is going to be um, slightly repeated information from the end of episode 4, but a lot of it's going to be a little bit newer. And I feel like it's just because of the how the game changed so drastically from episode 2 to the end of episode 4. I feel like it warrants a little bit deeper conversation. So, like I said, uh, or like how we found out in episode 4. By the way, if you are watching this and you have not watched episode 4 yet, do not continue right now because there is high amounts of spoilers. And like this whole video is going to be spoilers if you have not watched any of the series. So please do watch from the beginning up till now, because this is just an analysis. So this is episode 4.5, essentially, because it's going to be just one of the many recaps that I feel will happen because of the sheer depth of this game and its content. So at the end of episode 4, we find out that the whole experience we had from episode 2 to up till that point in 4, when we wake up in our bedroom, was just a nightmare. Like that was why it was called Dark Nightmare. We literally had this entire dream sequence in which we're going through this house, which explains a lot of the different elements that were occurring throughout the whole time, where you have unexplainable shifts in time, where we were walking, but we could not have been walking that long for it to go from almost midday to pure nighttime. There's no way that it could go from really sunny to pitch black in a few moments of us walking. There's no way we could walk that distance. Also, it never was explained why we were not tired from walking that long. Normally the body will tell you you're really tired, and I feel like we're not an insomniac, so there's no reason why we should not have felt tired. There shouldn't have been a reason. I don't know why I have my headphones in. Taking these out for that. And that probably spiked sounds because of the mic, but yeah, so there's no reason why we should not have been fatigued. If we were walking long enough to where literal hours were passing us by, there should not have been a reason. The other aspect to that is that our protagonist didn't notice a lot of things that were really blatantly, obviously not okay or correct at all. Like when we saw it was pitch black outside, we decided to open the windows to see if it was a viable escape route to jump out of the window. Even if you jump out of a 2-story window, the most you're gonna end up with is maybe a broken bone if you properly, I'm emphasizing this, properly land on something soft like a bush. If not, hopefully you took gymnastics and can roll out after jumping from a high place, somersault or whatever. I think that's a very slim possibility. There's also a large possibility you'll probably break something horribly and you might end up dying. But 2 stories, not a very large drop. But this was not a 2-story building. This was a ridiculously tall building. I think I mentioned in the podcast, our second episode of the podcast, which hopefully will be up on my channel by the time this goes up because of some internet troubles. But if not, please do check it out on Hawk's channel, which is Infinity HD Productions. But enough sidetracking. Getting more to the point, I make a comment that it's 2,000 plus unknown feet in the air. This building, where we are in this building, is ridiculously high up because we don't see the ground. And the game makes a comment about it. Even if you were at the top of the Sears Tower, I knew it as the Sears Tower, not the Willis Tower. So even if you were at the top of the Sears Tower, or let's say the Eiffel Tower, it's pretty high up if you go all the way up. But at no point in time would you cease to be able to see the street below or the ground below you. So the fact that we can't see that is it's very concerning. uh, because then that means one of two things, which I think I mentioned, was either there's something supernatural going on here, or we're just in the world's largest or tallest building, in which case we would not be able to breathe. The minute we open that window, we would not be able to breathe. Even if all the windows were shut, we wouldn't be able to breathe unless they were pumping pure oxygen into the corridor consistently. And we affirmed that this is like an older styled house, so there's no way that would be a possibility, because we saw no ventilation shafts or anything, because we could clearly smell everything on in the rooms in the corridor, because there was no way for the air to escape, so you could smell the blood and the guts of the victims in this haunted house. So it's very, very interesting when you take into consideration that the only way this could ever be happening is if it were in a dream sequence, or if there were supernatural elements at play. So it's, in my opinion, it was a very interesting take when they chose to make it a dream sequence. It makes the title of the chapter much more it makes the titles make a lot more sense, because it was essentially a nightmare. It was a terrible, terrible nightmare that we had. But it could have easily gone the other way, in that it was such a horrific set of circumstances that would cause the chapter to be called Dark Nightmare. Now, whatever decision they made, I think this is a very, very good one. There were a lot of other ways it could have gone, but taking the opportunity to have kind of supernatural elements in there, or unexplainable elements in there, that create that atmosphere of just kind of confusion and almost dread or fear. This game is a little bit more suspenseful. You don't get scared, you just feel unnerved by a lot of the things that occur to these characters. It makes you a little bit anxious when things are happening to them, because you don't know what's going to happen next. And especially for that decision, I can't remember the last time I actually played through this game, sat down, played through it, because I think I barely got into chapter 2 and then stopped playing it for a couple months, and then decided to pick it up and start over for the channel. And playing through it again, I would not have expected the decision of having to either force Nanami to leave with us, even though she expressed in great urgency that there's no way for her to leave this space. So our choices are either to kill her or to leave her there. Obviously, we chose not to kill her. There was no option for that, because of how our character is. But our options were to take her with us forcibly, or to leave her. I think during my first playthrough, thinking back at it, I think I chose the first option, which there's nothing wrong with the first option. I don't remember what happens. I think then and there something horrible happens and you wake up, or something wakes you up in that moment, like something happens to Nanami. But in the option that we did take, if you want to know more about that other option, I would recommend buying this game. Even though it is a visual novel, this is very in-depth. Even though Always Remember Me is kind of long, that one's more stat-based. This one is so heavy on the story. Not to say Always Remember Me isn't, but there's a difference in the length of that versus the length of this. By episode 4, we had a lot of things already decided that we were doing. For this one, there is, I don't know. For this game, there's just so many more options available to us because we have very difficult decisions. And like I said, in life, you're always going to have tough decisions. And I think this game so far has given us very good glimpses at that realistic element of, this is, if this were somebody's actual life and they had to make these decisions, it would be very difficult for anybody. Leaving somebody that you've known since childhood, that you've grown up with, as much as I said to, as much as me and Hawk have talked about this, or Henry, as much as me and, Henry or Hawk, whichever you'd like to call him, but as much as we've talked about it for horror situations, I don't know that it would ever be an easy decision. It would be very sensible, and I think I said this in episode 4, but it was a very sensible decision to leave her, or to leave Nanami, because it serves little to no purpose to have you and a friend. I'm going to move this a little closer. There. It serves no purpose when you are with your friend. And it could be, you could have known each other for, a few months. You could have known each other for a few years. It's all situational and based on the person that you are and the person that you're with. It really depends on what will happen. Like in that situation, in that moment, if there's no feasible way to get them out, to take them with you, it serves really no purpose for you to try and sacrifice yourself at the risk of neither of you escaping, rather than trying to escape yourself and going to go find help, or going to try to find help, so that way, hopefully you can save your friend. If you can't, then you save so many future lives that could have been taken by this maniac if you chose to stay. Like, if you had chosen to stay and die, you would just have added to their endless list of kills. So there are really tough decisions in the game, and it goes back to that phrase at the beginning of this chapter: the day we cease to exist. In literal meaning, the day we cease to exist, Nanami ceased to exist because she dies in the nightmare. I feel like no matter what decision you make there, Nanami is going to die either way. But it depends on how you take it. I feel like I think I mentioned it, of her maybe being an apparition, and I honestly did not remember whether or not that was a true thing that happened, depending on what situation or which decision you made. But on all intents and purposes, we don't know if in the nightmare we were talking to a real flesh and blood live Nanami, or if we were talking to her spirit who could not leave that place, and she wanted us to make that decision to kill her. You don't ever know. And there's no information that's given that would help you make that decision, or make that or help you to affirm that. So it's so difficult in that moment to realize maybe this person's already gone, and they're in their own way making peace with what's happened to them. Nanami could be a ghost that, she wants to make that decision that, I can't live like this. I'm trapped here, and I don't want this to happen to you, so I want you to leave or to kill me. And the other thing for the day we cease to exist, in the meaning that I took it and briefly mentioned in the end of chapter 4, or episode 4, I keep saying chapter, episode 4, was that maybe it is the metaphorical sense in which we have this situation in which as the main character, the protagonist, have to make these decisions that we no longer exist the way we know ourselves. The day we cease to exist. And all the way through, with the decision that we made, the main character regretted it every step of the way. They kept thinking, maybe if I did this, maybe if I did that. And that's a very real life kind of thing that happens to people, is regret. And speaking from personal experience, I have a lot of regrets in my life of things that could have been, the things that I could have done differently. And the fact that the game puts you in that kind of a situation so early on, this is the beginning of the game. This is the beginnings of the game. Like, these chapters are very long. I don't know how many chapters there are, but this is a series that I feel like is going to be around for a long time, and I'm going to lower my gain because I feel like you're going to be able to hear my family. So I'm going to take a... Okay, so they stopped. So hopefully you didn't hear that. Sorry, I'm just checking my gain right now because I don't know how loud I'm going to be. Yeah, you don't really... I don't know. As a game, as a gamer, this game excites me a lot more now. After playing through it for a little bit, it excites me so much more now. And it's mostly because of these real life elements that it's implementing. Because originally it was kind of a horror game, and I kept hating on the main character, but in reality, that main character, that protagonist, is a lot like a lot of people, like the average person. I feel like that's the direction they were going for, which makes a lot more sense now, reaching the point that we are in chapter 1. And there's just that real human element of regretting decisions or regretting choices that maybe you could have done something differently. And there's always that. There are a lot of times in that I know of where certain things happen to certain people, or certain people make decisions for themselves that they might not be around. And I've made a few decisions here and there that I'm not proud of, and that I've regretted so much. And I've always thought of, maybe if I had done this, maybe if I'd done that, maybe things would have ended up differently. Maybe everybody would have been happy. And I think that what this game is getting at with this first chapter is that we would all love it if those tough decisions or these horrible things that happen in our lives were this dark nightmare. And the moment we start to dwell on that, or the moment that we start to think about things that we can't really change, I feel like we stop existing. We stop being real people. If we try to make everything perfect. This is a very serious conversation. I'm screwing up words. But if we try to make everything perfect, if we try to make it so that everybody's happy. Nobody's going to end up happy. That's the reality. You can't make everybody happy. And there are a lot of decisions that are going to come up in your life that's just like it's not possible. So, at this point, this is a really good game in how it's forcing these conversations afterwards. Because a lot of this is stuff that I've wanted to mention in the videos that's made them a little too long. And I should have made the decision earlier in the episode, or in the last episode, to just do this analysis / talk back for the series. I feel like every few episodes there's going to be one of these. I'll just write down what I want to talk about. As you can see, I'm starting to write notes for myself for videos and projects so I can keep my thoughts together and I can remember what I'm going to mention so I don't get off track too much. Because I know I do that a lot. And even if I just played straight through the game, which, to be honest, for me, I don't feel like that does a game justice. I feel like you have to interact with it a little bit. You should be, I don't know. I feel like you should be able to play through a game and want to talk about it then and there, or like have certain situations pop up. And this game just provides so much more than I originally thought it would. There's so many opportunities for, if you want a game to practice doing things like voice acting, I feel like this game should be up on your list because there are so many ways to interpret the game. That moment where we say okay to what is happening, to our decision to leave Nanami, or to our decision to leave Nanami, where she's like, no, I can't leave with you. And we decide to say, okay, bye-bye. There's so many ways to say that. A lot of this is, there's so many ways to interpret a lot of the information. This is just my interpretation. If you have a different interpretation of the game and the meanings behind the title and, the kind of subtitle that went with Dark Nightmare, the day we cease to exist. If you have any theories about that, or if you have any comments about my theories or anything, I'm happy to answer your questions as best as I can individually. If you have other theories that you think might kind of explain a few things that happen in the first few episodes of this chapter, the first few parts of this chapter, then by all means, please do put them in the comment section down below. I would greatly appreciate it. And I think a lot of people would also appreciate it as well. And it just creates I feel like it opens up this dialogue for not only me to talk to all of you who watch these videos, but for all of you to see each other's opinions, or what you want to take away from this series or from this game as a whole. And I hope I hope that this encourages you to buy this game and to play through it, because it is a really in-depth story that is being woven by the developers. And for a game that came out in 2010, 2011, it is phenomenal. And the fact that, like, nowadays it would be more surprising as well, with the amount of censorship and things that we have, and this almost sugarcoating that we do in society for kids nowadays, or for young adults and all of that. I feel like this is one of those games that helps to put back in perspective, reality, the reality of the situation. If you sugarcoat things for somebody for their entire life, they're not going to be able to make these tough decisions. When these come, it's going to damage them so much if they have to make that tough decision for themselves. If they have to decide between, staying at home where it's safe for them for school, or branching out, following their heart and leaving somebody who, and having the strength to leave somebody who they've been with forever if they're in a relationship, and being able to be vulnerable and put themselves back out there. I don't know. That's my personal opinion, but we're at time for this video. This is going to be a long one as well, kind of long. It's going to be like a little over 30 minutes, but thank you all so much for taking the time to watch this. I really do hope that you take advantage of that comment section down below, because it is your best way of communicating with myself and the other viewers about, how you feel about this game, or anything else you kind of want to talk about. We covered a lot of topics in this. Aside from that, if you did like this video, if you do like this series, please do click that like button down below. If you want to be super awesome, please do click that subscribe button so that I can keep making this kind of content for you guys. Yeah, without further ado, this is Librous Blood, and I'm signing out.